Hello, and welcome to Abby Lee Wellness, a place for sensitive souls to feel grounded and at ease as you learn everyday tools and insights to live your life most inspired. Welcome, everyone, to the Abby Lee Wellness Podcast. We have a very special episode today here with Monica, and it's been a year since her and I recorded Grief Part 1, Episode 5, and that episode was hands down the most downloaded and shared episode around the world, with some of the strongest responses, and so many messages that I got were very profound from a lot of people around the world. So I was waiting for the right time for when part 2 would come out. So if you missed it, episode 5 goes into the story of how I lost the love of my life partner, Phil. We were together for 6 beautiful years, and one day he just suddenly died. And that episode goes over not only his death story, but also his life story, along with my girl Monica, who vulnerably shares the story of her brother Mike, who is known as a legend in Denali National Park, where he passed away at the age of 24. So in today's episode, you get to hear us focus more on the day-to-day of grief. What does it really look like day-to-day after loss? And it just feels like the right time to share. I wanted to allow myself a full amount of time to really experience grief, to dive into the grief, to let grief take over me at times, to really just experience grief. And it wasn't until this last month or two where I was like, okay, it's time for a part 2 with Monica. And I'd like to add in that the software we recorded this episode on created some glitches in my audio, and it doesn't sound horrible, and there's plenty of spaces where it doesn't sound like that, but there is some glitchiness at times on my end. And Monica sounds great, though, so I just wanted to say thank you for being patient with that, because this just isn't one of those episodes to re-record. And honestly, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the podcast, and please share this with a friend if it's impacted your life in some way. And let's get to it. What do you got going on over there, Monica?
I am just honored once again to be a part of this and ready to get into it.
So I'd really like to set the tone again for this kind of podcast for myself too. I mean, I benefit from it, and hopefully for you too, Monica, and for anyone that's listening. I'd like to invite people to settle in to your own experiences of grief, whatever that means for you. If it's witnessing my grief journey, witnessing a friend's grief journey, if you've been through the depths of grief, if you've lost someone in some way. And what I've learned, one of many things I've learned in this last year, is how grief manifests in so many different situations. I just did not know. I just didn't know what grief is. I had heard of grief. I had seen people post about it, this thing called grief. And I just didn't realize how many situations in the human experience are grief. So I welcome anyone who has just whatever your experience is with it, whether you don't know much about it, whether you've really been in the depths of it, whether you've experienced grief from losing a job, grief from a divorce, grief from the loss of someone you didn't know very well, grief of the loss of a pet or any animal, the loss of a dream, maybe going after a dream that you realize isn't going to work anymore, or retirement, or experiencing some kind of traumatic event, or grief of our health being one way and now it's not that way anymore. Maybe breaking a bone and you no longer can do that sport you really loved. Or grief from when we leave home for the first time, whether that's you that left or you're the parent of having a child that left. So grief manifests in so many different ways. So taking this time, using this opportunity while listening to this podcast to drop into that, and maybe allowing gentle comparisons at time, like, oh yeah, my experience has kind of been like that too, or interesting, I haven't experienced that, or that's interesting that others have experienced that, or letting the podcast validate you in some way, or letting this episode allow you to explore your own experience of grief, whatever that is, and just inviting it all, just inviting all of it. So I'd like to start off by lighting some Palo Santo, or also known as holy wood, because I've become extra in tune with herbs even more this last year, and particularly burning them. And each herb, I've learned, they each have their own personality and respond differently. So, for example, when you burn sage, it smolders for a long time. Or when you burn cedar, it crackles. It makes this crackling sound. Or with sweetgrass, with braided sweetgrass, when you burn it, it releases this joyful, beautiful vanilla-like scent. And with Palo Santo, it takes a while to light. So I'm just going to start off lighting my Palo Santo to help ground me and just really get into this space that we're all in together. So for those listening, I'd invite patience in the process, presence with the episode, and allowing yourself to just breathe and have presence. So whatever you're doing at the moment, you can feel a tall spine, relax the shoulders down, let the eyes soften. You can just kind of notice how your face feels, the temperature of it, any little like tingling or bits of energy in the cheeks. And just let your forehead relax, and let the jaw relax. And we'll take a nice inhale into the body and let out a full exhale out of the body. And 2 more times, refreshing inhale, full exhale, and again. I'd like to again remind you to be present with your grief journey in this space together with Monica and I, and to allow yourself to feel whatever needs to be felt, to allow your experience to be valid, to allow yourself to validate whatever I'm going through, whatever I've been through. It makes sense. And I'd like to continue by bringing up the process of even setting up for this episode. Like, Monica, you and I talked yesterday, and it's so hard. Like, I had all these notes over the last year. I've so many like epic journal entries that I reviewed. I laid in bed last night and was reading through my whole year, and I was like, holy shit. The things that I've written, things I've already forgotten about. I was trying to remember a few things that you and I have talked about over the years. I like searched in my phone just the word Phil and looked at all the messages I've sent you, Monica, over the year, and just all the dreams I've had, thoughts and experience, and I'm just like things I've just already forgotten. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, holy shit. It's just such a big energy. Grief is such a big energy, and like I've said to you yesterday, Monica, of how like I really do see this big ocean. Like, you and I met when we were living on the big island of Hawaii, and I can just picture at the end of the road where our house was, watching these big ocean waves, the Pacific Ocean, and it's just such a huge energy to work through. And I know I have never had someone in my life teach me how to navigate grief, what to even do with this energy. And so it's been such a process to figure, like, how do we contain it or put like a little bit of structure, a little bit of borders on this big crashing ocean wave of grief. And it's even just mind-blowing to me that the word grief is just, what is that, GRIEF, five letters, like one syllable, 5 letters, that's it. That's it. And like, I just feel like it should be like a roller coaster of a word, like griefalodoncolitosaurus or some shit. And so it's just like, what the fuck? Yeah, how do we do this? How do we express this massive energy in a way that just shows the human experience? Like, I don't want people to think I have it all together. And yes, I have the tools, and that's what a lot of people have said to me this last year, like, Abby, if anyone's going to be able to walk through this, like, it's you. And which has been helpful. And it's like, yes, I'm able to feed myself, and like, I've been cooking really well and taking care of myself, and yes, these tools are there, and it's still like, it's really, really, really hard. And I'm learning that, like, through this last year, I've seen how many people are walking with grief, like how now that like I've become in tune with that energy, I'm just like, holy shit, like, there's so many humans out there that are blanketed in grief, which of course that's like partly my projection. I've been blanketed in grief, so then I see it in others. And also for me to realize how many humans have gone through these huge experiences of grief and aren't talking about it. And that's what blows my mind, is like, oh my gosh, this biggest energy of the human experience is the one that we're avoiding talking about the most. And so that's a big part of what calls me to do this episode, of just allowing that energy to be present today.
That was said so beautifully. And I'm just grateful for how we came about it, and like how we talked yesterday, and we both had all of these notes and then just came to conclusion. I forget your exact words, but like just like really trusting the process. So this episode feels like a trust fall because we have so many stories, so many notes, so many thoughts, and it can go so many different ways. But I feel like, yeah, we agreed on trusting it. Like what needs to be said will be said. What needs to be felt will be felt. And I was so inspired that I actually threw away all of my notes that I wrote. I was like, I'm not looking at anything. And I felt nervous after that. I was like, shit. But it's just like, just trusting it. We got it. We've got this.
What made you throw the notes away?
I just had this empowering moment earlier. I was looking at all of it on the floor, and you know this, but I guess not everybody knows. Like I literally write everything down. I'm in the kitchen cooking. I have a thought, a download that comes to me, and I'm writing it down. And I actually threw those notes out in the kitchen as well. And to me, it was like a very personal thing to do on just trusting the process. Because to be honest, I don't even go back and read those notes that I write in the kitchen. I maybe will glance at them, but it felt very cathartic and necessary to do. It was like I was also just clearing the space too.
For this episode?
Yeah. Throwing notes out, and I swept my floors for this episode as well.
Cool.
I was just like cleaning today. I'm like,
wow.
Get this shit out. Because like a clear space, clear mind, clear heart, that's a real thing. And my floors, yeah, they needed it. Really bad.
There's something so ancestral about like sweeping. Like with a broom, just like sweeping. I love sweeping the space, clearing out the energy, even when it's not dirty, just sweeping it out and letting it go outside. And then
getting on the broom and flying away.
Exactly.
Maybe it was a past life. Maybe we could do it in this life, but things to work towards.
You know, it's cool because the way that I set myself up today, like woke up, I'm like, okay, today's the day, and I did yoga right away. I did like a 30-minute yoga flow, and then I made some beef chili with a cow, like a local grass-fed cow, of course, and I have my homemade tomato sauce from tomatoes from the garden, and it all in my beef chili, and just heated that up and had my warm morning beverage. And then I walked downtown, like, okay, I want to get some just walking, and I left my phone just on the side all day. I'm just like, I just like don't want to fucking look at that. Like, I just really want to be fully present in my body. So just like all these steps of like how to really be in my body today, and just clear the space, clear my mind, but still allow some thoughts that I had coming up. And I was like, I'm just gonna walk downtown to my red light therapy appointment and then set up the space. And now we're here.
I love that. We had kind of a similar-ish morning, minus looking at the phone. I was looking at my phone, but I got up, had some warm lemon water, made oatmeal with some blueberries. Got to get those antioxidants in. And then I went to the gym and then came back, and I took my dog for a 4-mile walk. And then I was just feeling like really goofy and also just like in my power today. And the reason I was looking at my phone a lot is because I made a really funny Instagram story. At least I thought it was funny. And I don't know about anybody else, but I just feel like we post things for ourselves to look at. Like, I just posted a story and then looked at it like 30 times and just laughed every time. And then I took a bath and I was like, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone for like 30 minutes. And then I didn't. And then I had a dance party with the Palo Santo and a little cleaning time. But I'm glad we just shared that because it's like, it's a lot of prep going into something like this. It's not that we just roll out of bed and we're like ready to go.
Yeah, because people don't see all of that. Like, I live with a lot of intention, and people who know me see that. And, you know, when you just you hit the button, listen to the podcast, there it is. And then you just keep on going on. And it's like there's this whole journey and process behind it. And that's why I personally don't hammer out so many episodes, because it's like it's gotta have this, and people can feel that. Even the way I'm sitting right now, the way my voice comes out of my body, I'm like sitting on my meditation cushion, and I did like a vocal warm-up. I just do that like on YouTube, the 15-minute vocal warm-up exercise, which is really nice to just do daily anyway, to help open up the sinuses and the throat and just be like feel the vibrations of the voice and the body. That's been a morning routine that I really like.
Can you send that to me, please?
Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
There's a 10-minute one, a 15-minute one, and I think a 20-minute one too. So I literally just like love starting my day off that way. Even if, yeah, or like if you're feeling like a slow morning, that's like a nice way to just like get in your body right away. Like, oh, I'm just going to sing and do a vocal warm up with this video.
I love that.
So then, what is your intention with the podcast episode today, Monica?
My intention is to stay present and, honestly, as always, creating a safe space. So staying present and creating that safety for expression. Because like you said, grief is just so, or you said something like this earlier, just like how big it is and intense, and I am just a true believer that we need safe spaces so that we can even begin to feel and express grief. And what is your intention?
I have low expectations. That's an intention, just low expectations, and expressing what needs to be expressed in the hopes that it'll reach the right people. And because I was just so amazed by the response, I had no idea what was going to happen with our last episode, and so to just get the messages I got last time has been just a really interesting part of the process. So yeah, creating space for grief in a safe space.
Yes. Abby, I just want to give you a shout out because you have really taught me throughout the year, because we've seen each other a few times. You really taught me to ask more thoughtful questions and to really listen. And I tend to interrupt because I get really excited and I'm just like, oh my God, I need to say this right now. And you've really helped to teach me the power of deep listening. And from that space of just deep listening and presence comes the thoughtful questions and dialogue, which is, again, another reason why I threw out my notes, because I just notice I can be in a conversation and I'm thinking like, oh, what am I going to say next? Or thinking about something else. So thank you. And I know that so much has happened for you in this past year, and I really want to hold space for whatever you need to say. So my question is, how are you really doing?
It's funny because that has been the hardest question to answer. Something about how are you has been like this whole year. I'm like, how the fuck do I answer that question? And for the first time, I realized, like, I've worked with elderly population when I was living in Hawaii. I had it for, I think it was about a year, where I worked with two older women. They were a couple. One was dying of cancer, and I was taking care of her. Like, I was very intimate in their space, bathing her, cooking for them, taking care of the garden there in Hawaii on their beautiful property. And I finally understand, like, when I've asked specifically the elderly population, how are you? And they just go, I'm alive. Like, have you ever heard an older person say that? Or someone who's maybe sick, or there's like, I'm alive.
Yes. Well, today at the dog park, an 80-year-old man, he likes to say above average when I ask him how he is, and I really love that. So today, it's like, how you doing, Bob? And he's like, above average, and I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I pictured myself asking this question a little earlier, and you just saying, good. And I just started laughing.
See, okay, and that's what I was just going to say. It's just wild. I'm like, okay, that's what people do. They just say good. But I get why people do, because it's like, okay, let's just not even, like, do people really care when they ask that question? I'm not sure. Like, it's just like a tick. Like, it's a thing that we just say, hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Oh, okay, good. And then we move on. Like, it's just a greeting. And for me, it's like, wait, is this the opportunity for us to connect with our souls? So it's like, how the fuck do I genuinely answer that question? So the practice I set up for myself, naturally, this last year was, whenever I go to the grocery store and the people who are bagging your groceries, or the cashier at the grocery store, I'm going to try to answer as honestly and vulnerably as possible. So that became my exercise. Like, when my big goal was like, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm really going to let this journey take over, and just, even though this is really hard, and we're going to do it at the grocery store, and because I'm always at the health food store. And it's like, I wouldn't pour out my whole life story. It was just, when they're like, hey, how are you? And I was like, not as well today, or I'm feeling a little stressed, or I'm kind of tired. And I would just leave it at that. Like, at least just like a one, like, I'm like, I'm not going to say good. I'm not going to fucking say good. But the responses I was so surprised by. I mean, maybe it's just the cute mountain town that I live in. Everybody's just so chill, and I feel like they just get it. And so many people here are outdoorsy people and connected with nature, and when I say something like that, especially when it's at the health food store too, I feel like just it's the right environment. And for someone to be like, wow, I'm sorry, or oh, or like, what's going on? And it just felt like that, like a little step, like an area of growth of like, okay, I'm just going to really answer this. And I would even prepare it before I went, like if I'm going to the gym, or somewhere in public, which it was so hard to go into public, like right as it was happening, right after Phil died. So coming back to just how I'm doing and how it's been. It's a really hard question to answer, and then there were times though when I was preparing, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna say I'm not good, or I'm gonna say it's hard, and I'd show up at certain spaces. How's it going? I'm like, good. I'm like, fuck. Like, damn it. Like, no, I said it. Oh, it just came out. And I appreciate with you, Monica, like when I've told you stuff like that, you're like, yeah, maybe it wasn't a safe space to say it, like that just came out, or just kind of like trusting that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has been a process in learning how to answer that question. How are you really doing?
Was there a moment, like in the grocery store, in the gym, when you had a like genuine connection and conversation, when you answered like, I'm not really doing well, or I'm tired? What was there a moment that you remember that other person connected?
The first image that comes to my mind is just some woman at the biggest organic store in town, and she just like really looked me in the eyes, and I just said I'm stressed. I'm feeling really stressed, and she just looks at me and she's like, I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope things get better. And I was like, thanks. And it was just something. It was just genuine. Just the genuineness of her response. Like she like really cared and probably knew, and that just felt nice.
What keeps coming up for me is your dreams that you've had. And the one with Phil. And if you, I don't know, if you don't know Abby personally, like, Abby has next level dreams, okay? It's like, holy shit. You just woke up from that and you're just like, gotta go about your day. Like, I would be paralyzed. Like, what? So I guess it almost kind of feels selfish for me to ask in a way, because I'm like, can you tell me that story about your dream again? But like, I
love that you want to hear it. That's
yeah,
cool.
I just feel like, first of all, I could listen to it forever, and I don't know, I feel like other people could really benefit in listening to your dream world.
Thanks for saying that, Monica, because you've helped me realize I've had wild, epic dreams since I was little, and I've been lucid dreaming since I was little, and I thought that was normal. And then just in the last few years, especially this last year, when I talk about people, they're like, whoa, are those your dreams? I'm like, yeah, I just thought that was the human experience. I just thought that was normal. And is there a dream in particular that you remember, or just...
Yeah, the really intense one with Phil. Is that too vague? I feel like I can't
yeah,
really...
I've had a lot, but I know which one you're talking, because I've had a lot. But there was one that was like the most intense, one of the most intense dreams probably of my life, or just interesting. It was in April of this last year, and when I reflect on it, I'm like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what it all means, and I don't need to know what it means. It's just interesting to share. It was 8 a.m. The seasons are pretty drastic up here in western Montana, and so my body fluctuates. Like in the summer, I rise really early when the sun rises at like 5:30, and then in the winter, I get up a little later, like around 8 a.m. with the sun. And so I just remember it was like I was supposed to get up, but something was telling me to keep laying there. And I've had a lot of those days. I've had a lot of those days of just fucking laying there and having it be really hard to get out of bed. So it was like, I'm still working on deciphering this, where am I meant to keep laying here because my body needs the rest, or am I supposed to be like, okay, get yourself up, Abby, it's time to like light some fire under your butt. So that's also why I've connected a lot with herbs and fire and burning herbs this last year, because I really wanted to bring the fire element more into my life, and because I realized I needed it to bring balance. So it was just one of those moments where it's like, yeah, it was around 8 a.m. Like, maybe I should get up. But I was like, something's just telling me to lay here. And so I kept laying there, and I ended up falling back asleep, which I don't normally fall back asleep after I've already been up and it's light out. And so it was like between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I was in the dream world, and I was in my room, and I was lucid dreaming. So I have like full consciousness that I'm dreaming. And I would really like to hear from other people out there if you lucid dream, because I do think I haven't talked about it with a lot of people, because I don't know many people that, like, I lucid dream at least once a week. And my experience with it is at the moment I realize I'm dreaming, the dream world, your body tries to wake itself up. So I'll like get pulled out of the dream. I can feel my body waking up. I can actually feel my body laying on the bed, but I'm still conscious in the dream world. So I'm like in between. So I have to be like, pull myself back in. I'm like, okay, nope, we're gonna stick in the dream world. Like, fuck yeah, we're gonna do this. I love lucid dreaming. It's awesome. It's how I learn about myself. It's how I dive into the subconscious. I ask people questions. I ask myself questions. I explore. I explore my traumas. I really let myself be free in a lot of different ways. I work through my fears. So it's one of those moments. It's like, okay, pull yourself back in. You're dreaming. And then so now I'm back in the dream world, just in my room, totally normal. And Phil appears. And I've heard, so my dad's been sending me a lot of near-death experience podcasts and YouTube videos, and that's been really cool. Just to hear, it's just this whole realm I've never dove into. And it's been comforting, it's been interesting to hear of what near-death experiences are like. And what I've heard a common theme is that when people have these near-death experiences, they're traveling to the other side and they get greeted by all their past loved ones, and they often say that they look really good, that they look really healthy. And that's how Phil was. So he appeared and he was just sitting next to me in the dream, and I was so happy to see him. And because I was like, I am dreaming, I'm going to take advantage of me getting to hang out with Phil right now. I just remember choosing to look at him in the way that he always looked at me. I just really wanted to, Phil always had those googly eyes towards me, just he was just bursting, literally bursting. He would just cry, just looking at me, I love you so much, on I would say close to a daily basis. I'm not exaggerating with that. And for 6 years. And so I was in the dream, I'm I want to give that to him. I'm going to look at Phil and really give him that love that he gave to me. And his skin just looked really good. He just looked so healthy, and he had this entire different energy around him, an entire different aura. In this life that I had with him, Phil had a little bit kind of anxious, nervous energy at times, and in the dream it was just gone. He was just cool. It was just a different energy that's hard to, he just had this cool, relaxed, everything's totally fine energy. And yeah, his skin just looked so good. I remember he just looked so healthy. And we just embraced. I was like, oh my God, I just got to hold him and hug him, and we looked at each other, and we made love. I could feel him. I could actually, I don't know how other people's dreams are, but when I'm in the lucid dreaming state, and when I'm not lucid dreaming, I can physically feel things. I can really feel them. I can touch and feel the touch in my dream. And that was one of those moments where I could really fully embrace him and feel him. And then later we were cuddling, and it felt so good just to be reminded of what it felt to cuddle each other and just to feel that next to each other. And I looked him in the eyes and I was like, you're dead. And he goes, what? He looked confused. He didn't know he was dead. And I just look at him, I'm like, Phil, you're dead. And then just his head started to float away. His body was still there, but his head started to disappear. And then I felt myself starting to disappear. I was about to start to wake up. And I go, no, 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 no. I said, I was like, no, no. I was like, please don't go. Please don't go. I need you. I still need, come back, come back, come back. And then so he came back, and then I came back. We stayed in the dream together.
Wow.
So then I was like, okay, we're here again. Take advantage of this moment. And so I was like, I asked him what was really on my mind at that time in April of this last year, how. Well, first I was like, you were so good to me, Phil. You were so amazing. You were just the best lover. And he jokingly was like, yeah, I get an A+. I was like, yeah. And I was like, how do I possibly love someone else in the way that you loved me? I just want to, that's just been such a big part of my journey this last year of just love, fully embodying love, giving and receiving love in all circumstances. And so just how you were the best at that. How do I do that? How do I give that to somebody else? How do I really love someone? And he goes, you just ask. And I was like, that's it? You just ask? And he goes, yeah, you just ask. And then I woke up.
How do you just go about your morning or day after having such a profound experience in the dream world?
Thanks for asking that, because it's fucking wild. After that one, I just laid there. I was like, that was one of the realest, like, what the fuck was that? First of all, like, was that really what I think it was? Like, was that Phil? Was that Phil? Like, was that his spirit? Like, it was, like, the fact that I could physically feel him, and the questions I asked him, and the way he looked, and how he responded. That message, like, Phil loved asking questions. He was just asking questions all the time. He's where I learned a lot of my humility. And so to have him say, just ask, like, all you have to do is just ask someone. You just ask them, how do I love you? What do you need? Like, just all the questions that come with figuring out how to really love someone and be there for other people. So it was just so real. And I literally laid there. So now at this point I remember it was 10 a.m. So like this situation happened from somewhere like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I remember not getting up until 11. I let my whole body just lay there for a full hour and just absorb it, feel it, just feel it, fully feel it. And what it did for me is I remember all of a sudden it gave me this wave of goodness, which was such a fucking relief of going through so much turmoil and ups and downs on a daily basis. And then all of a sudden this was that thing that made me believe again, or like helped me trust the process. Or a huge thing this last year has been figuring out how to trust in spirit again. Like, I just trusted the whole universe before. I feel deeply connected to it. I've even people in my life who are like, wow, you know, like, Abby, you have so many synchronicities that happen all the time, and those things don't happen to me. And I wonder that. I'm like, I bet they do happen. I just, you know, maybe people just don't see it that way. Or I don't know, maybe they do happen to me more. I don't know. But I've just lived in this world of just deep trust of how it all works, not really needing to know exactly how it all works, but just being a part of it, like really being a part of our world and seeing the beauty that's around us. And my grandpa, which I haven't talked about, my grandpa died just 2 months before Phil died. And so he was like my last grandparent to pass. And that actually sent Phil and I into like a little bit of a rut, because it was hard. Like, I was grieving, and that was kind of hard for Phil. But it's like, I almost like even forget, like I forget, because I've just been so deep in my grief with Phil that, yeah, my grandpa died. And so when my grandpa died, it just, like, things just made sense. Like, the moment I found out he passed, like, he had Alzheimer's, and he had a decline after my grandma died, and because they were married for 60 years, and just naturally that's when things started to decline for my grandpa. He made it a few years after my grandma passed. And I was like sitting in my room. I remember when I got the news, it was in July, and the golden poppies were all over my yard. The California golden poppy is this beautiful orange flower that's just is like freaking weeds in my yard. And I was just sitting on the floor looking out the window, and my aunt called me, and I got the news, and I was like, wow. And I just instantly could feel Grandpa. I could just feel him in the bees and the flowers. And like, it just, even then, like, it just made sense. Like, I don't know where it all goes or how it all works, but it just felt like Grandpa was out there. But with Phil, I haven't felt him out there, or I just haven't trusted it or something. Like, I doubt it. Like, this is the first time where I've doubted it, or where I've needed to know the answer. Like, is that really Phil? Is that sign? Is that really him? Like, I want to know. And my one friend was like, what would that do for you to really know? And I'm like, it would just give me comfort. It would just give me comfort. Like, you know, is this just all bullshit? Or is that a sign? Is that like, yeah, how the fuck does the spirit world work? Or like, yeah, what really happens when we die? And that's just been this burning question for me this last year, to where I even went down to South America 2 times in 1 year. The first time with Phil, that was only, let's see, April, May, June, July, August, just 5 months before he passed. We had this epic journey in Peru where we hiked through the Andes, camped, and it was like a 5-6 day hike out to Machu Picchu, and we stayed in this village, and it was just incredible. Like, it was just such a good trip together. And I went down there to drink ayahuasca, and I went down there first by myself for 2 weeks, and then when I finished my retreat, Phil flew down and we met up in Cuzco, which is this ancient city in Peru that's at really high elevation. I think it's 11, 12,000, maybe 13,000 feet. It's a really high city. And we met there, and especially fresh after my ayahuasca retreat, it was just so beautiful. And then after Phil passed, I was actually already planning on going down to Ecuador when he was still alive, and he was going to maybe come with me too. And then he passed, and I'd already applied at this ayahuasca retreat center in Ecuador, and I actually applied to volunteer. They accepted me as a volunteer. And so I was going to really be of service on this trip. Like, it was my intent. Like, I felt when Phil was still alive, I applied for this. Like, I was in full capacity mode. I was just in my prime, super healthy, and was like, I'm ready to be a part of this retreat and really give back. I want to really dive into learning from the people who facilitate this and really holding ceremony, just learning every part of it and giving back in that way. And then Phil passed, and I was like, do I go down anymore? I really questioned, like, God, going to Ecuador, and the retreat was in just 2 months. Let's see, September, October, November, December. No, actually 4 months. It was, yeah, there was one in December or January. So I had a few months, but I was like, like, I don't know. Like, could that be too much? And then I emailed the retreat center. I let them know what happened, and their response is what gave me the indicator. They're just like, we're here to hold you. It's okay that you can't volunteer anymore. If you'd like to just be a participant, then that's okay too. And I was like, I gotta go to receive. I'm not gonna give when I'm in this kind of space. I'm just gonna go to receive. And when I went down there, one of my really big intentions was, please help me trust in spirit again. Please help me trust that he's really out there. And so that's just been like a huge thing for me this year. And I realize that it makes sense that, you know, when this big event happens, I guess this happens to a lot of people, where you question what the fuck is really out there, what really matters in life, what am I doing? Like, I've had all of those questions. So when I went down to Ecuador with that intention, with that question, I also was going through a lot of negative thoughts. I could only remember the hardest parts of mine and Phil's relationship. I was like ruminating in my mind. I was arguing in my mind with him. And I've said this before, where Phil would say, he's like, 90% of our relationship is amazing. And then there's the 10% where we deal with the hard stuff. And he's like, when we're in that 10%, just, it feels like the end of the world. And so I've had to I was just stuck in that 10% right after he passed, just ruminating on like the angry stuff. I'm like, fuck, like, you know, and people would send messages like, oh, let the good memories of your relationship keep you going. And I was like, I can't fucking remember those right now. And it just sucked. Like, oh my God, the greatest human of my entire life, the one that I love the most, the one that's known me the most, this incredible union that we had, I'm just thinking bad thoughts about him. That was just like brutal for me. And, or like just ego stuff of like what I should have said here or there or whatever, all that crap. And So when I went to the retreat, I was like, please help me trust in spirit again, and please help me let go of these negative thoughts. Please help me let go of these negative thoughts. And I thought that I was going to be that girl. Like, I thought I was going to be that chick at the ceremony. There was like 10 other people on the retreat, strangers in the jungles of Ecuador, right on the edge of the Amazon, in the Andes. So it was like mountain jungle, which I love that climate. And it was ayahuasca and San Pedro. And yeah, I just pictured maybe I'm gonna just be that chick that's probably like fucking wailing. It's just a few months of after losing my person, my everything. And here I am. Who knows what this natural medicine, is going to bring up in me. I for sure thought I was going to be the loudest one there, or the one going through the craziest shit, or like crying on the ground. I just was like, oh man, here we go. And instead, I just had the most beautiful experiences. Almost every ceremony was just pure beauty. Just beauty. Like, I had really, really intense visuals of just, like, I was even like, what do I do with this? What's the point of this? Okay, cool. I'm seeing like really beautiful stuff, just really intense, flashy visuals. Like, I love the cognitive stuff. I love getting deep into the mind, and I love when plants can help you do that. And I love solving things and seeing things from new perspectives, and I just really like how it opens my mind. And so this one was just, there was zero thinking, just pure beautiful images for hours, several times in those 10 days that I was down on the retreat. And so I'm like, what am I getting from this? And the message was, just enjoy, Abby. Just enjoy. Welcome the beauty in. Just sit back and welcome the beauty in. So I did. And then it wasn't until the end of the retreat when I realized, holy shit, my prayers got answered. Like, it worked. Ever since that was January of 24, those negative thoughts, that crap has just been gone. And what I didn't realize, that then I just got like flooded with all the positive. This is when I came back to the States after this journey, and after being in Ecuador, ended up being there for a month. And I come back, and I was just, flooded with all these beautiful memories of everything we had, and just how incredible our relationship was from beginning to end. Just the passion and the love and the care. And what I didn't realize is how much harder the beautiful memories were. Like, I was like how much more painful it was to actually feel all the beauty that we had. It's like something about the negative ones just kept me in this. One of my friends was like, oh, do you think it was you, like, not letting him go? Like, you were just like holding on, and maybe. And then all of a sudden to just be flooded with the beauty and the pot, like, that's what just broke me. So coming back to the dream too, of you asking what it's like to be in the everyday life after having such a big dream like that, is it's been a constant. It's still been a thing of trusting in what's out there, or like wondering what's out there. Like, I have moments where I'm just like, I just want to know, like what the truth is with death and life. And it's interesting because Phil was going through that before he passed. He was just dying to know, like, where does consciousness go? His brain was so like, how does it work? He was doing the same thing. So I still find myself in that, like, so when I had that dream, it felt like a refresher, like, okay, I got this. Maybe he visited me, I don't know, but I just got that second wind of believing and moving on, or moving through, and feeling his presence, and like, okay, you're, like, I don't want to say like you're out there, like, I just don't know. I don't know, but it was comforting. It just felt really comforting and gave me a whole new wind to live, to go about my day. And yeah.
That is so beautiful. And thanks for sharing the part about trusting spirit. That is huge. And I'm wondering, like, after the retreat, was there like this definite turning point of I fully trust spirit, or does it kind of come in and out? Like, is the trust still building, or was that all of that beauty that just like consumed you? Was that like, okay, yeah, I fully trust spirit?
It wasn't like a I fully trust spirit. I remember asking you, or I remember asking like one of my friends in town. I told him about the dream, and he was like, I think Phil visited you. I think that was Phil. And I was like, you think so? He's like, yeah. Sounds like you got visited by Phil.
Hmm.
And I've just really appreciated connecting with people who do have that faith and trust. And I just have friends on all sides of the spectrum of believing or not believing what's out there. And it has definitely been, I have felt more of a connection and comforted with those that say things like that.
Totally. I feel you on that. I go like, I'm reflecting now. I go in and out of, because I feel like I'm on a path and I'm very guided by spirit. And then honestly, the other week I was like, what the fuck, spirit? And I was like pissed. I'm like, I don't trust this. Like, where are you taking me? What's going on? And I just let myself go through all of that. And which brings me back to another point. You said something about moving through you. I've been working on that a lot. Like, let this grief, let these intense feelings move through me. Because I don't know what it is about being a human where we just cling on to these feelings, and especially the quote unquote negative ones or the heavy ones. We just like, we're like, what is this? I shouldn't be feeling this, or at least I feel like that at times. And quite often when I'm feeling that, I just say, please move through me. This is just energy that needs to be moved through. It needs to be felt. Like I think it needs to be acknowledged, but just continue to move through me. I feel like there's what is it? There's like some sort of poem about being, how our emotions and feelings, like letting them be a guest in our home. Like, you know what? You can come in. You can have a little tea for a little bit. I will even let you sit on my couch, but then you gotta go. So it's just like, feel it, let it go. And I'm going to give you another shout out because you live by that. And even when you were saying how after the dream, you just let yourself lay there for an hour, that's really hard to do. And
Yeah,
it
it's a
comes
long
so
time.
beautifully and naturally. Yeah, I would be like, okay,
I
I'm gonna lay
really
here for an
fucking lay there
hour.
for an hour.
That's amazing. I would be up in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, an hour, and then I'd like, so I want to just acknowledge, and that's not the only time. I know we've talked a bunch of times about moments like that and just really being in them, and that's honestly something that you've also taught me as well. Just like, be in this, let it. And the thing about that is it actually moves quicker because we're giving it space to do so, rather than if you woke up from that dream and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna get up and go about my day, it might linger and like weigh you down a bit. So that's really awesome that you did that. And my other question was, did that dream happen, I forget if you mentioned the month, but did that dream happen before or after the Ecuador trip?
After February, March, April, 3 months after.
Wow.
That reminds, with things that you're saying too, of like really feeling things. And because, yeah, that's been a journey, even for me, someone who's a deep feeler. Like, I love that shit. I've had several people ask me in the last couple years. Do you have Scorpio in your chart? And you asked me that
Mm-hmm.
once. One of your friends asked me that, which I didn't know. And then I looked it up, and that's when I first found out that I have a Scorpio moon. And I'm like, what makes you say that? And one of your friends was like, because you just want to feel it all, like fresh,
Mm-hmm.
even after the grief journey when we went down to Mexico for your birthday. I was like a stop on my way to Ecuador. It worked out awesome. The flights were so cheap to actually fly into Mexico and then Mexico to Ecuador. And your friend was like, yeah, you're just like, oh, just hit me with it, like just hit me with all the feelings. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you like that's a Scorpio thing. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't know, that's like it's just such a part of my design to go there, and which has made me realize how many people don't want to go there. So it makes me wonder if like part of my purpose in this life is to show that it's okay to go there, and actually when you do go there, look at what happens when you do, because people maybe like they're so scared, or yeah, they think they're protecting themselves by not going there, when actually it's the opposite. You're able to move through it. And but even me, someone that loves that shit, that has still been, it's still hard, because yeah, the pain, it's like some of the deepest pain I've ever experienced. Like there just still are not words in our human language that I have to describe the feeling of my heart just like ripping open. And with that, it's like the pain of it being torn apart, but it's also being opened even further for receiving love, for giving and receiving love from myself
Mm-hmm.
and others. And it's like this like romantic paradox of pain and creativity and love, like to be able to have all of that in one. And I remembered something that you had said, Monica, with so I work on this private ranch. It's a 37,000 acre ranch where I do ceremonial guided hikes and forest bathing, sound bathing, yoga. I do apothecary classes where we make handmade lotions and body scrubs that are off the land. And it's just this beautiful, 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 beautiful place. And Monica, you're like, you literally set up your life to grieve. Like you have set your
Mm-hmm.
life up so that you can be this, so that you can do this. And it's so true. Like I had moments where like so I listened to a podcast. It's the Glenn Doyle podcast, which is a really popular one, and they have one or two episodes on grief whenever I last checked. And I remember one of the women in it saying how she talks about the grief of her mom, and how when she would go to work, she went in a room and would just be like, okay, I gotta get through this. I gotta get through this. Like she like couldn't, like she would cry, but then she'd be like, okay, I gotta, or moments where she's like, I can't cry. And I gotta go to work. Like I think it was like an office job or something. And for me, like I get to mourn on the land. I have all this land to just heal on. And I've had moments where I did have to cancel with clients 5 minutes before we had an appointment. I had moments where it was around last Christmas. I had a private breathwork session with someone, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I've been crying all day, and I don't know what's right now. Like because I'm so used to taking such good care of myself and really showing up in a way to hold space for others. And like I do all the self-care things, eating well, sleeping well, I cleanse myself regularly with herbs, and like it's a lifestyle, because people can feel that. And like when I'm holding space, it's just a 1 hour yoga session. It's important for me to show up healthy and well for that client. So this was a moment where I was texting my dad. I'm like, I have a private breathwork session in 1 hour, and I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. And I had heard about how the holidays are hard for people, but I didn't I didn't know what was going to happen on this day. Like, for some reason, like, Thanksgiving was fine, but something about Christmas where it was just like I was fucking losing it. I was like crying all day in the forest. I remember it was so cold and I was just standing there just bawling, surrounded by the pine trees. I love the pines. I love, love, love the Montana pines. And am I supposed to cancel this? I'm like, that seems shitty to cancel on someone, especially with things like breath work, you know, and you're like, ooh, I got a breath work session today. And to do that to someone, but also I'm like, I want to show up like this. I've never showed up to a class or a private session like depleted, I guess is where I'm going with that. And so this was that moment. I'm like, do I show up after crying all day or am I supposed to cancel this? And so I was like, I'm going to ask my dad of all people, because he was a businessman. He owned a business, and he's also been, honestly, surprisingly, very comforting to me in this last year. He's really given a lot of good guidance and advice to me. And he's like, maybe if you show up, you're going to be able to, you'll be able to understand. He's like, I think you gotta go. You probably even have the even more compassion to hold the space for this client. And I was like, you think so? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So then I go to the guy's house and I give him this private breathwork session, and I'm like asking what he needs, and he was maybe in his like 50s or something, and I was like, what are you needing from this session today? And he's like, I'm going through really hard grief right now, and just started crying. And he started talking about his brother and how he lost his brother to, I think, like alcohol or drugs around this. He's like, so Christmas is just really hard, and I just really need like a deeply healing meditation and breathwork session right now. And I was like, okay. And it was healing for me and definitely healing for him. And I remember even asking at the end, I'm like, do you want to talk about it, or do you want to keep it for yourself? And he's like, I'm going to keep it for myself, whatever his experience was with the meditation and the breath work. So it was just kind of, yeah, one of those moments. I've been wondering that with being a coach and a guide, or whatever the heck you want to call me, this like balance of like, oh, am I supposed to be the one that has all my shit together? And yes, definitely, like, I'm really picky with who's my healer, or like my massage therapist, my yoga instructor. Like, there's very few humans that I actually look at how they live their life and I'm like, okay, I trust your healing abilities because you live a healthy life. Like, it's very few people. So to like wonder, like, okay, like I can be going through these things and I can be having a hard time and I can be vulnerable, and yeah, that I can. It was a beautiful session. And to, like, I guess, I don't know, like, I'm finding myself needing to like put an answer to it or something. So I don't know what the answer is, but that has been a thing where I'm like, I've noticed that through the vulnerability and through the hard time, I've actually had lots of people reach out to me this last year. Like, lots of humans that are like, I need to come to Montana and I gotta heal something. And several of which have acted on it, some who haven't. And so it's just interesting, like, this thing that I'm embodying. Like, whatever that is, whatever you see in me, the person listening, what you see on social media, it's definitely, I think maybe I've become a little more relatable by going through something that's so hard. And that comes back to like the grocery store thing. When people would ask me, how are you? And when I would give them my answer of like, not so good, I was like, I actually feel like I'm more relatable when I say not good than when I say good, because I've been so good for so long. And like with Phil, like I was so content. I loved how we lived our life. And then like I was just like bopping around town like, yeah, like I'm doing good. And then to now be in a space where I'm like, I'm not good. Like I've really, by saying that, I've realized how other people are comforted by that, or how it allows space for that person to then they can open up, like they can then be vulnerable by me being vulnerable, even if I am the coach or the guide or the healer or the facilitator or whatever. And not to totally lose it, but to still to have that vulnerability. I'm going through this, and I can hold space for you too. Yeah, that was a long-winded. Yes. I don't even remember what you asked or where that came from.
Me neither, but I'm just like, yes. Oh, like you just nailed it. And the like flashing light like term that keeps coming through me or whatever after hearing you is just the human in me sees the human in you.
Yes, I like that.
And I don't know if that's original or not. Who cares? But this one isn't original. Ram Dass says, our freedom lies in our humanity. And then with that, like just everything that you said, also I'm going to add in medicine woman to what you were saying too. You're like, guide this, and I'm like, medicine woman. But yeah, just being able to relate. And then that again circles back to grief. When we allow ourselves to feel so deeply, grief is like, I am standing here raw and naked, and it is rough. But then at the same time, it's so beautiful, and it invites, again, it's that safety. It's like, hey, I'm feeling this, and another person can then open up and be like, me too. And that kind of reminded me when you said you gave that private breath work session. It just felt like, yeah, I'm a human and you're a human, and this is deeply healing for both of us.
We are taking a quick bathroom break, and if you can take this moment to navigate on your device and hit the 5-star rating, this is extremely helpful for me and my small business. It makes the algorithm happy, which then reaches more people, and that helps me achieve some of my personal goals, which is wanting to contribute to a kinder, grounded, and more easeful world for all of us. So on Spotify, if you just navigate to that, like the landing page of the podcast, and you'll see those 3 dots right next to the settings icon. Click the 3 dots, and then it says rate show. Click that, and you can hit the 5 stars. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you just scroll to the bottom of that podcast landing page, and you can rate it down there at the bottom. Or feel free to leave a comment too if that makes you happy. So you can also support Monica, who's the author of 2 children's books titled From Me to Humanity, Part 1 and Part 2, which are heart-centered books for your child or for your inner child. Her Instagram handle is in the show notes, so feel free to follow and message us on Instagram if that fills your cup, and your support is really helpful. So let's continue on with the episode. I'm going to light the Palo Santo again to just keep me coming back.
Yes. Abby, I feel like when you were peeing, I felt like a little kid sitting on a carpet like, will you tell this story next? Can you tell this one? And
aww.
Since we are at the ranch, that was like our setting that you were just talking about, and can you tell the owl story, please? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, please bless the collective with that one, because that shit never happens. And if that ain't Phil coming through, I don't know what the fuck is.
But see, Monica, I still doubt it. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
no
for bringing that
problem.
up.
When you were telling me, I'm just yeah. Can I like preface it a little bit with this?
Yeah.
When you were telling me the story the entire time, I did feel present, but man, in the back of my mind, I was like, "That's Phil. That's Phil," and it brought me to a thought of, I wonder. I think I shared this with you, but I'm just like fascinated by the spirit realm because ultimately, like, none of us know. None of us know what it actually looks like. And when it comes down to it, I think what is important is just whatever resonates with you. God, universe, animals, like whatever resonates and you feel something. And for some reason, I just had this thought of like, is there a learning curve in the spirit realm, and like where you can shape shift and like turn into these different animals? And I just felt like Phil was trying out the owl costume. Like, let's just
Right.
go to the craziest, rarest bird.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let's go there.
I was giving a private sound bath on the ranch, the beautiful, beautiful ranch. If anyone, a lot of people who have come to that ranch, they end up listening to the podcast. So if you're out there, let your mind go back to the beautiful time we shared in my glass castle. That's what I call it. It's just all glass, and it overlooks a meadow with the Rockies in the distance. We got deer coming by. We have foxes, all wild, of course. There's a red-tailed hawk in the summertime. I've now seen generations of deer give birth, and then I see the next one giving birth again. Like, I haven't seen the birth, I've seen the baby, and then that one that then is pregnant, and then I see a baby again. So I've seen like generation of deer on this land, right, like less than a foot in front of the glass of the yoga studio. Like, you're like in tree pose and the fawn is running by. Or we had a bear that has come by in the middle of a session. Or it's just remarkable. And surrounded all then by the pines. So the pines are behind us with an aspen grove, the meadow, and then the Rockies. And there's also a little creek that goes by. It dries up later in the season. There's only like a few months where the creek is there. So this was what? This is just a few weeks ago.
This is fresh out the press. Fresh.
Yeah. I had a private sound bath. She's lying down in the glass castle. And actually, no, before she laid down, I look out the window and I saw there was an owl. And I see it in the distance. And it's on a little wood perch thing that's only 2 feet above the ground. He was like pretty low. And I just saw him in the distance. I was like, oh my gosh, look, there's an owl there. And I have never seen an owl on this part of the property. So like, I've seen owls, but I've never seen one right here where my glass castle is. And I've been there for like 4 years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an owl there. Wow. And it was just, I saw it just turning its head, like owls do. It's just turning its head side to side. And I was just admiring it from inside the glass. And I was like, oh, I didn't want to start the session until it flew away. I just really wanted to see it fly. But it was like several feet in the distance. Like, it was like out there. Like, you could clearly tell it was a big owl, but it was like, it was a little bit, I'd say 50 feet away or something. And he just kept spinning his head around hunting. So I'm like, okay, he's just doing it. Like, we got to start the session. And so she lies down. And I'm sitting there playing the crystal quartz bowls. And I'm guiding her deeper and deeper and deeper into the session. I was doing some kind of body scan where we're really like it takes time to really let the sounds adapt into the body. I mean, some people are just ready to lay down and receive, but lots of us, when we live in the mind, it takes time. So I really like to allow time for a sound bath to help your body drop in. So we're scanning the body, scanning, where like we've gone from the head down to the neck, down to the shoulders, the stomach, the whole back, the pelvis, and then we're down at the legs. So I've like dropped into all the body parts. I'm like playing the bowls, and I look over my shoulder, and I see the owl like moving around, and I see him like flapping around, and I'm like, whoa, he's really active right now. And I'm like looking over my shoulder out the window while playing these bowls and guiding her deeper and deeper and deeper. And so yeah, we're a solid 15 or 20 minutes in, which is usually when people are like in it. Like you're getting in it. You're ready to receive the sounds. Here we go on the sound journey. And all of a sudden I just look over and I see this massive owl, which turns out it's the world's largest owl. It's called a great gray owl. I just learned about it for the first time a few weeks ago. The great gray owl, 5-foot wingspan, I look over, he has his wings spread, and he's just diving down straight for where I'm playing the bowls. And then, wham! He just, full force, full dive, smacks into the glass. And I yell, holy shit! And the girl, she looks up. She thought I broke a bowl. She thought a bowl like shattered. And she like gets up. And I'm like, an owl just smacked into the glass. And she's like, whoa. And so we get up and we look over and we see this massive owl just right on the other side of the glass, just right there, closest I've ever been to an owl. And it just looked me dead in the eyes with its big yellow eyes, definitely in shock or something. And he just looked at me, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God. And he just keeps standing there, like, right. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I was really, like, I've been pondering, like, some animals, maybe it's because of how we connect, certain animals, at least for me, like, I just connect more with certain animals. And so some animals feel like they have maybe more of a consciousness. Like I love the deer. I feel very connected to the deer. I don't feel the consciousness in them as much. When I've been around a grizzly bear, I'm like, holy shit, that thing is a conscious being. Like, I can feel the intelligence of that animal. And with this owl, I was like, there's something in there. I was really shook up by it, to watch this majestic, magical, huge animal fly full force into the glass right where I'm playing the bowls, and to just smack into it. And there, I'm like, oh my God, is he okay? And yeah, he just stood there for a while, and I just looked at him. He's looking at us, and then he flew away. And I was like, oh my God. And then we went, I was like, so then she just laid down, and I'm like, all right, I guess we're gonna go back into the sound bowls. And so I just like started playing again. We had 45 minutes still of the session. And when we came out of it, we were both like, she's like, I couldn't really get into it after that happened. I was like, me either.
How could ya?
Right? I was like, out of all the sound baths I've had, I'm okay with this person not being able to get into it because of what just happened there. I'm like, when the fuck? Like, have you ever heard of an owl smacking into glass before? And then I was Googling it because I was like, did he like the sounds or something? So people have described it as supernatural hearing. So they're able to hear the footsteps of mice 2 feet under the snow. And then they just hunt, and then they hear it, like the sound of the mice, and they just get it. So the fact that like I was playing the bowls, and he just dove straight for the glass where I was playing. I'm like, oh my God, he must have heard the sounds. I mean, that would be my guess.
Yeah, he's like, let me get in on that body scan.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm feeling it, full body. Also, have you seen this whole time? You know, on Bill and I, the science guy, they're like, Bill, Bill, Bill. I'm hearing this, and I'm like, Phil, Phil, Phil.
And then I mean, that was a big experience, and I sat on it for a while, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to post the story on Instagram. So I, posted a 5, 6, 7 story situation about it with the photos of this remarkable owl. And I decided I was going to make tea while posting it. I was like, oh wow, I'm going to reflect on this experience, post about it on Instagram. And I was like, okay, I made my tea and I put it in an owl mug that Phil gave me. It's a mug shaped like an owl. And I purposely drink out of this mug when I'm feeling really wise. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to drink out of the owl mug. And so I was sitting there, I posted the story, and then I got up. So I had forgotten, I put the owl mug on the floor. So I was sitting on my chair here in the living room, and I had set the mug down, and then I stood up and I kicked the owl mug and it broke. And I was like, what the fuck? It's just the handle just broke. It just smacked on the ground and just broke. Just the handle came off. And I was like, is that how you're getting my attention? Is that how you do it? And I don't know. I was like, that seems kind of weird. I'm like, it seems a little
rude.
Yeah, aggressive or something. Okay, smacking into the thing. Then now my owl mug broke. Now I have to fucking super glue that thing, and I hate dealing with super glue. So it's still broken right now. That was just a couple weeks ago. But you think that was Phil?
Oh, absolutely. Can we do polls on these podcasts? If you think it was Phil, vote yes.
Yeah,
if
right?
Not, yeah, just because, and honestly, too, I'm saying this, and I could be totally wrong, but I just go with, what resonates, and that has just, when you first started telling me that story, the owl mug, it was just reoccurring. It was yep, that's me, hey, and spirit, again, would love also to hear if anybody has ever seen or experienced an owl smack into the fucking glass before. But
yeah, you can leave comments now on episodes. So
perfect.
Vote yes or no on if the owl was Phil.
Yeah, let's do that. Was the owl Phil? The other reason, I guess, I think yes. Again, it just resonated. I trust my intuition too, but I just think spirit comes to us in different ways, and honestly, it's it felt like he's showing off a little bit too. That's why I said, was he practicing to be an owl and then just smacked into the glass? I'm gonna be the biggest creature. I don't know. I also naturally like to find humor in situations too, but regardless if that was Phil or not, whatever, that is incredible, profound. And you also naturally connect with owls, and there's a lot behind it.
Yeah, thanks for the tables that your dad made me. So I posted this on Instagram too, where Phil and I had gathered some lodgepole pine right before he had passed from a powwow. They were leftover logs that you could take that were used to put up some of the teepee structures for the powwow. And Phil built so much of our furniture in our house, and I asked him, I'm like, we need end tables. We just need something with drawers. We have no storage here. So he was going to build these end tables, and we found these lodgepole pines at the powwow here in Montana, and he was like, these are the perfect things for the legs, the 4 legs of the end table. And so he sanded them down, and he passed. So that was his last project he was working on. And so I shipped those logs. Oh my God. It was ridiculously expensive to ship 8 logs to Michigan. And I was like, my dad's like, I'm sure Monica's dad has logs, and I'm like, but these are Phil's logs. And yeah, Monica's dad and Monica offered to make these end tables out of the wood that Phil had. So basically, like completing Phil's project. And your dad, Jeff, is an epic builder too. I mean, he's just epic on so many levels. And his style is like exactly mine and Phil's style, like just that Montana natural wood cabin kind of style. And he made these end tables, and I asked for an owl on one of them. And so he freaking crafted this beautiful end table that I have in the bedroom, and it has like the moon phases on it, has the antlers of a white-tailed deer from Michigan as the handles, and made with maple wood, which is really interesting too because I've been really connecting with this maple tree that's right outside my house this last year, where it just feels like it's protecting me, and I'm like, is that Phil? And then your dad put this beautiful owl on it that I've been sleeping next to every night. So yeah, something with owls.
I gotta tell him that story still.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't told him yet. I'm just picturing his response. I'm going to be all, holy shit, guess what happened? And he's going to think it's like very significant, but be like, oh, wow, huh, fascinating. Maybe not. That's just like my guess.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know.
I will. I hope everybody that's listening to this tells the owl story to somebody. I mean, like, isn't that what we're here for? Storytelling, and especially, it's just, oh man, it's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I'm having a question come to mind. It's almost formed. Wait for it. Something along the lines of, and it doesn't have to be so, maybe how I'm saying it is kind of like black and white, or I don't mean it like that, but what's the biggest takeaway or lesson that you've learned from grief within the past year of losing Phil? Like, what keeps reoccurring or coming back? What feels like big or like significant in a way?
Let me sit with that for a moment. So what is a big thing, like a lesson or insight that has reoccurred for me through this grief journey this last year?
Yes.
I mean, so many things, but just a big one is like just realizing what grief is. And something that has come to me recently was this pain, this journey, this thing, this wave, this emotion, this energy that's just swept over me. I'm realizing it's the same thing I felt when I was a little girl. And that's just mind-blowing to me because I didn't realize what I went through as a little girl was grief. And I'm realizing that it's the strongest energy for me in aligning me to live my most profound epic life. I've really used this energy to fuel positive change, to show up in this world how I really want to be, and to let it completely drive me forward in helping me make decisions in my purpose and how I want to show up in the world, where I want to travel and why I want to travel, what kind of career I want to have, how I want to treat others, how I take care of myself, why I take care of myself, the things that I grew up in that I definitely do not want to hand off to, whether that's through my own children, if I ever have that, or whether it's through just each and every interaction I have with people every day. Like, it's the greatest driver for me, which is really profound to put that. I don't know if I've really put that into words, because I mean, I realized it as a kid. I like when people say, oh, the good old days when they were a child, like, I do not have that experience. I would never want to go back to childhood. There was definitely some positive memories and like some fun, some beautiful moments, but mostly for me, when I reflect on anything before I became an adult, like, I usually see the color black. And childhood was really hard for me. I had times of suicidal thoughts, like wondering, if life, if this, like, how could life be so hard? Like, is this life really worth living? And I didn't realize that that was grief, like that energy, that darkness. Like, this only came to me in the last few months. I'm like, oh my God, that was grief. The grief of life not being the way I wanted it to be. Life was not, I was mourning the loss of how I wished life could be. And I'd see my friends and I'd see the relationship they had with their family, their parents, and I was like, wow, I don't have that. And it was around that age 12 where I decided one day I'm going to live my life how I want. And I was like, it's not going to happen until I'm 18. I have to wait years of going through hell to live how I want. And so it was like pain, like so much pain. I cried every day for like years, and that pain, that those tears I had that was grief. I just like, I didn't have a word for it until now. I'm going through that same, it's a similar energy. I'm realizing it's a similar pain. We're even like wondering, like, what the fuck is the purpose of life? What's really worth doing? How do I, like, what am I really here for? Like, I know I had all those questions when I was younger too, and I really channeled that pain to live the life I want. And so that's when I started traveling all over the world, and that's why I went into the Peace Corps. Like, I was like, what's the greatest, biggest thing I can do to give back? Like, that combines my love for culture and passion for humanity and being able to give back. And it was the Peace Corps. And then ever since, I applied for that in my last semester of college. It was a 2-year journey until I departed. So I had to like completely adjust my life to follow this dream. I had, a 4-hour interview, the most personal interview ever, where they ask about like your religion and your relationships. Like, all of that determines if the US government trusts sending you abroad as basically a US diplomat. And with like a full health stuff can prevent you from being in the Peace Corps, all of it. Like, it was just the most thorough, intense career interview or process I've ever had. And so once there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to get in. And once I got accepted, it was like, I've done it. I was only 22 years old, and I was like, I've already fulfilled my dreams. I've done it. And so like every day since then, I'm like, I can die happy. Like, at the age of, I remember waking up on my 23rd birthday after living in Seattle. I moved out to Seattle as this like interim period between college and the Peace Corps. I'm like, I can't really get a real job anywhere because I'm going to be departing for the Peace Corps in a year. So I just moved out to Seattle because I heard it had mountains, an ocean, and a good music scene. And I just, like, my friend helped me road trip out there, and I just found an internship and just moved out there. And all of that was fueled by grief. It was fueled by like the absolute depths of pain and wanting to make sure that I was going to fully embrace this life and live the life that I want, and to make sure I break that generational trauma, or at least like work through it. Or there was just so much I was like, I am not passing this on the way that others have treated me. And of course I make mistakes, and I've hurt others too, and I just regularly hold myself accountable based on the pain I felt of the grief, of so much grief as a child. And so now, when I'm in the depths of the grief as an adult, learning what grief is and how it manifests in divorce, like when my parents divorced, or betrayal, or loss, or career, the loss of a dream, things I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, I've it's like the first time where I've tapped back into that energy, like real, like I'm having that energy now as an adult, and to use my own guidance of a little girl. Like what did little Abby do? How did little Abby get through this? Like, this is the fucking worst pain ever. Like, this is so unbearable. This is so hard. How, like, to be able to use myself as my own resource, to know what's my unique process, what's my unique, because we think other people have the answers for us, and we can ask for advice and it can help, but in the end, like, only you really know what to do, like your unique, like with what's right for, like, if you feel like you need to end a relationship or a job, you have to figure out your unique pathways and how you navigate life. That's why marketing my coaching has been so hard for me to figure out. That's why I don't even really do it very much, because it's like I can't just give you this how to. Follow this step and it'll get you through this. Step 2, you do this. It's like each human has to really get to know themselves and how they navigate their own process in order to know how to move through things or how to act on certain things. And in our today's world, we just have these like blanket statements like, do this, do that. And that's the stuff that makes a lot of money, and a lot of people follow it because it just gives you the answers. And I'm a big fan of the slower process. It takes more time. You don't see the results maybe right away, but once you get there, once you take the time to navigate your own unique network, that's going to be the most sustainable method that gets you through or gets you accomplishing whatever you want. So I'm basically just taking my own advice, figuring out my own network, and being like, yeah, how did little Abby get through the worst fucking thing she's ever been through, which was like most of childhood? And that was crying. I really think just like crying a lot and feeling it. Like, I've had people ask me this last year, how do you do it? I've had people ask me, like, how do you cry? How do you cry? And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, it's just something so natural to me. So how do I explain this to someone? So I'm like, okay, let me think of my process. I'm like, I just let myself feel it, and I do not bottle it. It was my goal this year too, to just, when it comes up, I fucking cry. You're just like, no matter what. Like, some people say they like schedule it, and I've heard like people who go to therapy, that's like a thing they learn. Okay, from 5 to 6, that's when I feel stuff, in order to like help you get through your day at work. And maybe that's one model. For me, that is not the model I like or that I want to do. And I feel closest to spirit when I'm in the depths, when I'm on my knees and I'm fucking crying and I'm like, what is going on? Help me, help me. And that's where it is. So it's like, when people are like, yeah, how do you cry? I'm like, I guess getting on my knees does it, or like going in the bathroom. Bathroom's just a holy place for me. It's the ultimate place of letting go and cleansing, and like a safe space. If I'm hanging out with people or at a restaurant and then like going to the bathroom. It's like, oh, you like close the door. It's that moment to have it be quiet by myself again, just like a recharge. And then I go back out. And I think that's just from being really empathic too. And so I'd say, like, coming back to your question of one of the biggest things I've learned is what grief is, so that I'm able to kind of like recognize, oh, wow, I've been through grief before, and this is how I navigate it. This is how I really feel it and embrace it and move through it, and realizing how few humans are willing to go there.
I feel like this just sounds very full circle. Like connecting it, what just happened, back to childhood. That's incredible to make that connection. And yeah, like you said, how many, we're just lacking safe spaces, I think. And I like to, like you said, yeah, how ultimately it's like we have a unique path and we're doing it on our own. But if we're open to receiving that guidance and wisdom and experience along the way from different people, places, that's where that magic happens. And the magic happens in the bathroom. It's so
Fucking
true.
does for me. Does it do that for you?
I do. Yeah. Like if I need a break, yeah, at a restaurant or something, I just go to the bathroom. And I wonder if it's a societal thing because, you know, on movies, and this also happens in real life, I'm sure it's happened to most women, we just go in the bathroom, and lady time in the bathroom is
That's
the
a whole
best. Like, we
thing.
just get pep
Yeah.
talks. Yeah. It's like, girl, you looking so good. And it's like, oh my God, you too. It's like, don't think about him.
Yeah.
You know, it's this whole thing.
Yeah,
So
women take a long time
yeah.
in the bathroom. If you have to wait in line, the women's restroom is like, it's so like the line takes so much longer than the dudes.
It's because 5 of us are in there at once, just like hyping each other up. And you just take turns. You're like, all right, I gotta go. All right, and like one person's looking in the mirror. It's a whole experience, but also alone too. When you need a good cry, I also like going. I have good cries in the car. That's so interesting though. Just people. Yeah, now you said people asked you, how do I even cry? How do I even do that? Just the time we're living in, how connected and also disconnected. And I just wish for everyone to find that safety within themselves and around them so that they can allow themselves to have a good cry and to grieve. Because grief is really a gift.
What's your comfort level with crying in front of others, or just crying in general?
Oh, yeah, it just happens. Like it's like I'm doing it on a scale. Like 1 being I do not cry in front of others, 10 being I cry. It's like it's up there like a 9 out of 10, and I just let it happen. It happened a lot after Mike's death in public, and it felt embarrassing at first, and then I just accepted it. And I'm making like a wave motion because it kind of ebbs and flows for me. But recently, and after our visit, Abby and I just took a nice road trip out west, and I was crying so much, and I just feel like I met a new version of myself and am continuing to crack wide open, which I love. They very much live from my heart space. And I mean, I tear up at pretty much, I know saying everything is a stretch, but really, I've just noticed a big shift. I'm listening to a story, somebody says something, it's just instant tears. And I don't feel shame and I don't feel embarrassment, but it's taken a while to get there because sometimes I feel more what am I trying, like more protective, and other times I feel more open. And I mean that goes with the cycles. Like if I'm in my luteal phase, maybe not so much, period different. It ebbs and flows, but I'm giving myself a high rating for that, and it's taken a while. What about you?
I I mean, yeah, I'm into it. So I cry like every day, and people who don't are like,
Yes.
what? What's wrong? And I was talking to my mom, and she said the same thing. She's like, I tear up like every day, like at work, and I just like meet so
Mm-hmm.
many interesting people. She's worked at the airport for 45 years, and she's like, I just meet so many interesting people, that are just on their paths. And I'm like, okay, I get it from you then. All right. Like, I'm like, I'm the same, mom. Like, I tear up at like joy and beauty and grief and love
Yes.
and all of it. Like, for me comes anger. Anger comes, like, if I bottle up my anger for a moment and then I let it release, it just comes out in tears. And I'm like, I think that is the most beautiful and harmless way to let go of something. And that reminds me, the texture of my tears, because I cry so much, I'm so like familiar with my tears in this last year, specifically when I'm thinking of Phil and am crying, the texture of the tears is different. And I'm like, because the water holds memory, and there's just all that energy in that tear. And I'm just like, whoa, like normally my tears are just kind of like thicker or something, but whenever I'm crying about Phil and whenever I'm grieving, it's like this thinner tear that just falls from my eye really easily. It's interesting.
Whoa. Do you notice like if it starts from the right or left eye, or if that even
Ooh,
matters?
I've noticed that sometimes one kind of cries a little more than, or if I'm laying on my side in bed and crying, maybe the eye that's on the bottom seems to like cry more, but at first or
Hmm.
something. But no, I haven't really.
I feel like I've heard something about like maybe joy versus sadness, like left and right, but I also don't know. Maybe I'll tune into that. But it's just making me realize how we're just going through all of the emotions, and just it's just a way to release them, and it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if somebody's crying, I'm like, yes.
But even this last year, like that's why I like crying at the grocery store. I'm like, is that really what I want to do right now? Like it's hard, but I'm like, I
Yeah.
have gone in there. It's yeah, I mentioned the grocery store a lot because I cook a lot. I'm like always fucking there, and I'm just like I'm. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm fucking at. It's just like, how can you judge a crying person? How can you be mad at someone that's crying? I just feel like it's the most. I just think it's beautiful. I just think it's the most beautiful energy to be in. And
It's pure.
yeah, and to just let it out when it comes. And but I still do have those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I think yeah, it's come definitely become easier as an adult. I'm like, I remember being a little girl and seeing like a random woman crying on a train and was just like, oh, she's crying. Like that's it. And like yeah, no big deal. Just fucking cry. Let yourself cry.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Like just seeing people like that. And it's taking me kitchen floor actually would probably be my favorite
Oh
place to cry,
yes.
because I like to add the drama on the kitchen floor. I have a lot of moments where I just feel like I'm in the intro of a movie or like a Lumineers music video. And for some reason on the kitchen floor, it's like, yeah, this is where it's
Crying on
happening.
the
There's just
kitchen
a
floor.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might write a song about that after. But the kitchen floor feels really powerful too.
So then, what's some advice you'd give to people who are grieving, and some advice for those who are wanting to hold space for someone who's grieving?
The thing that's coming to mind is allow it. Just let it happen. Almost like a surrender. Let those hard feelings go in, and I can just see it's like, how do I do that? It's being aware that a feeling is difficult. We can feel that. Like when something's really hard, we just have that awareness instead of maybe stuffing it. Just like what you do, sit with it, acknowledge it. Just acknowledge that it's there. Um how to be there for someone else, what I've learned is to literally just be there. Like, don't even take the pressure off. Oh, I know you were gonna love that shit. Take the pressure off of yourself, and just like physically be there. And I say that with confidence because I've been on both ends. I've been the person who's like, oh, I gotta say something, and that feels maybe more like ego. It's like, I need to say something, I have the answers. Like, we really don't have the answers, but there is something about just, if you're, whether it's on the phone or in person, whether it's silent, just sitting there, just being like, I have no idea what to say, but I'm going to be right here with you. That just feels very grounding. And again, it takes the pressure off. It's like, because really, like, we don't know what to say, or maybe we do or don't, and maybe that'll come. But especially when someone's feeling something so intense, I've learned this from like teaching and wilderness therapy, just to be super simple. There's no need to be like, what are you feeling right now? Drilling them with questions is really confusing. Oh, yeah, don't fucking drill.
Like, anytime in my world, please don't
fucking ask. Like,
don't ask why. Yeah, please don't ask
just
why.
No questions.
Just be here while I cry.
Exactly.
Yeah, no questions.
So that's what I would say. Just like, because you're already feeling something so intense. It's already really hard. It's already really vulnerable. You probably don't even want to fucking feel that. There's all these things, and there's these clouds in our heart and our mind all around us, but there is something so comforting about an individual just being there, just holding the space.
And as that person who's holding the space for the griever, you do have to have that trust and comfortability in that with yourself. Like, the people who ask and drill the questions are normally, like, I think that comes from a little bit of insecurity or anxiety, or just being in the mind, like, oh, what do I do this? What, like, you're asking them a bunch of questions, but really you're maybe kind of like asking yourself those questions. And so it's like, if you're totally just comfortable in the moment and you just can fully be comfortable with yourself, that need to ask a lot of questions just isn't there, to just fully embody that presence. And yeah, it's okay, like, maybe a question does come up that helps the other person talk a little more. There's just a different energy behind it if you're just fully present. And that reminds me that there's been moments where, like, I was at work, and these people that I've worked with for many years, and they're asking me how I've been or what's going on. And especially, I mean, I still cry very often when I talk about it. And I especially was crying a lot right after it happened. And I remember starting to talk about it, like thinking like, oh, wow, they're actually asking. This is so nice. And so they ask, and then I start to talk, and I just start crying. And the other person goes, oh, it's okay. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to talk about it. And I'm like, whoa. And I even say, I'm like, no, I want to talk about it. And it made me realize that, like, oh, my tears are making them uncomfortable, or it makes, they're wired in a way where they think that because I'm crying, that means, oh, no, you don't, it's okay. You don't have to talk about it. And it's like, wait, what? I'm talking about it right now, and that's what I want to do, and that's why I'm crying. And like, no, like, this is what we're doing right now. And then to have you say, no, oh, it's okay. I'm like, that's a projection.
I was just gonna say projection.
Me. Yeah, like, you don't have to. It's like, actually, that person probably is just really uncomfortable with themselves going there. So that's been an interesting insight that I've recognized in humans when I'm being very vulnerable, when I'm like, I'm going to be vulnerable. So I'd say, like, coming back to what you're saying, if you ask me how I am or ask about it and I just start crying, just be there with me in the tears. Maybe you start crying too. Fuck yeah. Or a hug, just hugging. That's been really nice. Like, while I'm crying, like, and a lot of my friends are massage therapists or body workers, so that's just like a go-to for them. They just like put their hand on me, or they hug me, and that, I'm just like, and they're just there with me while I cry. And so, yeah, just noticing when you start to feel uncomfortable and how that's kind of a reflection of yourself and where you're at in your process. And so, yeah, like what's your comfortability level with holding the space for others? That can be a reflection of the comfortability of the space and the depth that you've gone into with yourself and your own emotions.
Oh, you are just this is yeah. Like
I went there.
You went there and I felt it. No, yeah, just oh yeah, you said it. It's beautiful. I was thinking, well, I was like thinking the same thing while you were saying that. Just be like, a good way to practice with others is doing it for yourself. When you're crying, when you're in tears and you're all alone, let yourself do that. And then your capacity for others will naturally grow. And I got to go back to the projection thing, because that's a huge one. Because we're all mirrors for each other. So it's like if somebody's drilling you with those questions like, oh, don't do that, or how are you? It's kind of like you could just repeat the same thing. How are you doing? Like you said, like you're uncomfortable. And so, yeah, it's fine. But like the awareness, when we can be, another quote, but I just love this one. Like, awareness creates freedom. I probably said this in the last podcast, and I say it a lot because it's so true. When we can be aware of like something that we're doing, maybe we're not too great at holding space for others. Okay, that's fine. We didn't come here on this planet to be freaking perfect at everything. It's just recognize that without shame. And then next time when it happens, maybe be like, oh, okay, this is hard for me to do. And maybe that's it for that time. But just being aware and like wanting to make a change can really do wonders. And being patient, it takes a long fucking time.
That is really one of the greatest things I learned in meditation. I remember them saying that when I did a 10-day, I've done 2 of them, the 10-day Vipassana courses where you meditate all day, every day for 10 days straight, at least 10 hours a day. You don't talk to anybody, you don't journal, you're in your own little cell, you don't say thank you, you don't say hello, you say nothing to no one, complete silence for 10 days. It's just like it's like, yeah, one of the most physically and mentally challenging practices I've done. And I remember them saying in the meditation course, they're like, awareness alone is the most profound thing you can do. And that always stuck with me, because it's like we got all this shit going on. You're supposed to think like, oh, am I supposed to have no thoughts while I meditate? Am I supposed to whatever? And it's like just awareness. If there's anything you can do, the greatest thing you can do right now is just to have the awareness of what's going on in your body. And so that's always stuck with me. It takes the pressure off too. I'm like, cool, I'm just going to be aware. Just going to be aware. Just coming back to that. And then I drift off, and then I'm like, all right, I'm aware again of what's going on.
Yes. Any other guidance or advice coming through on your end?
Yeah, my thought is, another thing is when this is a very well-intended thing that people say when you're going through a hard time. And it's when people say, let me know if you need anything. And so if there's something I can contribute to humanity, it's to not say that when someone's in the depths of grief, especially like right after losing it, where it's like the entire world has been ripped like literally underneath your feet. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Especially like when I've never gone through such a great loss, and to have someone say, let me know if there's anything I can do, it puts another task on the griever. So it's like, now as a griever, I have to think of like, what? And like a lot of times that if you're grieving, and just how humanity works, you're going to feel bad asking someone to do something, or your mind can't even think of what to delegate someone in that moment. So, and of course it's so well intended. So what I would suggest is to, rather than say, let me know if I can do anything, just do something.
Yes.
Just do it. Just show up, send something. So like one of my favorite things, my friend Gabby, she sent me right after Phil passed. I got in the mail, she sent me like a soup thing. I wish I knew maybe I'll put it in the show notes. I'll have to text Gabby and ask this soup company. It's like specifically a company made to like sell, like to send somebody comforting food when they're going through a hard time. And she sent me like mac and cheese, and it comes with like a ladle, and it's in this really cute box. And it's like the entire company is founded on like helping someone through a hard time when you are having a hard time feeding yourself. And so right after Phil passed, his family was here, and Gabby sent that. And so I was able to like none of us are able, like, it was just, yeah, I lost a lot of weight, which was really scary for me. And 'cause I'm already like kind of skinnier, and so to watch the fat on my body just go zap, that was really scary for me. I'm like, am I ever gonna get my butt back? Like, I love my butt. I'm like, oh no. And it comes back. But that's the only time in my life that I can remember where I just had such a little appetite. It was so hard to eat for a very long time. And so to have soup shipped to us, like, that's such an easy thing to eat. And then I was able to just heat it up right away, and it tasted really good, and it was good ingredients. It was like flavorful. And then I could make it. It was like enough food to feed me and Phil's. It was like his parents, his brother, his nephew, for like a couple meals, like a group of us. And so it was just like something like that. Like, rather than saying, what can I do to help, just do something. Send some soup, send a check if that's helpful, for like, so that person can buy food. Or I guess, yeah, my thing is all about food. People showed up at my doorstep and they know me, so they brought healthy food and things that are really easy to heat up. Or, like you said, just being there, just being present, showing up as a body for someone going through that, or just calling them, or even just saying, like, I'm here when you want to talk, or yeah, just calling. And then the griever can decide if they answer that phone call or not. Like, just call. Or just saying, like, I'm thinking of you, or, yeah, yeah, or like my work filled up.
I'm getting goosebumps over here.
My work filled up half my fridge with food, which I never would have expected. That was like right after coming home from the hospital after Phil had passed. And I just remember like stepping into my house for the first time after Phil passed and being like, this is my new life without Phil. Today's the day I start my new life without Phil. Forever now. I'm living without Phil now.
The term that was coming to me when you were saying all that was just help lighten my load, like help me meet my basic needs, because I have this overwhelming feeling that's just taking over. And also, shout out to Gabby. That is so awesome. I would love to learn about that place that delivers soup like that. That's so sweet. But definitely food, and yeah, like you said, you nailed it. Just do it instead of asking, because the emotions are just so strong. We don't have the capacity to think beyond really this present moment. So just getting the food delivered, the money, whatever it is, or just being there. That was, yeah, I thank you for saying all that.
And just giving the permission to yourself and to your friend, if they're grieving, to be a shitty friend.
Yes.
That's something I heard in the Glenn Doyle podcast where they mention some. I'm pretty sure that's where I got it. I picked that up like when I listened to it maybe a year ago. Like Permission to Be a Shitty Friend, where like just knowing that the one who's grieving like might not show up in the way that they did before, or giving yourself permission. Like when I had people stay here, like when I held Phil's ceremony here, I remember like I had friends that were coming to stay, and I like had this weird pressure that I was feeling, and I had to really figure out what that was. And I realized what it was I'm used to being like really hospitable. Like I love when people are over. I want to cook for them and make them feel really comfortable when they come out here and visit in Montana. And I was like, "Oh my god, I can't do that." I had a few friends that came out here and I one by one called them and I was like, "I just need you to know that I'm not going to be able to like cook for you." And of course, each of my friends, they were like, "Of course, Abby, we're coming for you." And I realized I needed to say that. I needed to be like, to take the pressure off myself, to just like really set the bar low. Like I need you to take care of me. I need you to take care of me. I can't take care of you. So being able to show up, provide, and have it be okay that the griever is not in their prime, and giving yourself grace too if you're the person not in your prime.
Absolutely. And grief just reveals that too. Just where we're at in life on the other end, and just seeing like, oh, this person is going through a lot and I can't handle it, or I can. So it's just, again, that awareness.
So I'd like to come to a close by reading a text that my dad sent me at some point in the grief journey, because he has just I hadn't heard from him in 3 years, and right when Phil died, I was like, all right, I'm going to call my dad. I didn't even know if he was going to answer. And I called him and he answered. And I was like, "Dad, Phil died." And he's like, "What? What?" And ever since then, I've been happy with how our relationship's been. Like this year has been like he's really been there for me and really provided good guidance and advice. And I think too, just when we open ourselves up and are vulnerable and go through our healing journey, the effect that has on other people and how that can heal others too. And so just even my parents are in their like upper 60s and I've seen them grow. Like it's never too late to grow or have something change or have a relationship evolve, or maybe to let go of something or whatever it is. So that's been a big part of my year, of being impressed with how my engineer business dad has responded to my wild grief journey. So this is the text that he said that has been really good advice. So he said, "I believe you have to embrace the reality of everything you lost and building a new future. It was truly a tragedy from many perspectives in your life. It'll get better, but only if you embrace your grief and lower your expectation of the time it demands. Every grieving is unique. I've seen days, weeks, years, decades, and nevers. There is no timeline. You can't force it to go faster. You can't look for ways to lessen it. You have to make a good start into your new future one day at a time. But the wound is deep, bordering on near fatal. The healing will take more time than you think. If you accept that the pain will be there, it will allow you to strive to endure instead of trying to let go or forget. At the very moment Phil passed, your road in life took a violent turn into Never Never Land. It literally shattered everything at a uniquely critical time in your life. You need time to define that future. That's all that matters."
Wow.
And that's it. Yeah.
That feels like a good way to wrap this up, too. I mean, that was beautiful. I had chills all over hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you all for being a part of this episode. Thank you for witnessing our journey and for taking time to witness your own grief journey and where you're at. It's important, and it's important to create safe spaces where we can be witnessed in our vulnerability. And moving forward after this episode, maybe being open to talking about death. Just being open to talking about it. Allow yourself to recognize where you've been uncomfortable with talking about death, or where maybe you haven't processed your own grief or fear of death. Or look at the way your ancestors or people still alive in your life around you, how have they handled death? What has that looked like? Do they even talk about it? And if they do go there, what does that look like? What are some beautiful ways you've seen grief be processed? For me, when I was looking for guidance, I was really inspired when I learned some of the grieving practices of the Lakota Sioux tribe. Because in their tribe, the grievers are considered to be the most holy. So for those who are in the depths of their grief, they're seen as being the closest to God. So other people from the community, from the tribe, they will ask the one who's grieving to pray on their behalf, because they believe that the prayers of the one who's grieving are especially powerful. And something about that just makes sense to me. So thank you all for being here. And I'll leave you with one last little snippet of when we finished the podcast, but the mics were still rolling.
There's some good stuff in here. Whoa. Just entered a whole different world. But that was really awesome. I feel like it flowed in a beautiful way. Even when there was a pause, it was just like, there's a pause right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel?
Yeah, a lot came out. And then it's always interesting for me to like re-listen to it.
Yeah, and you're gonna, obviously, I already know you're gonna like piece it together and be so thoughtful and intentional. So thank you already in advance.
You're welcome.
I don't know, but I do know. Like, I don't know what it's like to actually do the tech stuff. I don't want to know. I don't want to be the person, but also thank you for being that. And the intention and love that you put into these podcasts, people feel that.
Thank you all for being here. This episode closes season 1. And if this episode helped you in any way, please hit the 5-star rating and share with a friend if you think they can benefit in any way from this episode. And we will see you next time for season 2 on the Abby Lee Wellness Podcast.